Hey guys, tonight we're traveling to the stony highlands of 12th century Ethiopia, where your feet crunch across gravel in the dark, and the only light comes from a few brave stars poking through the night sky. You're a monk, barefoot on sacred soil, wrapped in a rough cotton shawl that smells faintly of smoke and herbs. A hawk cries far above, and your breath fogs in the cold. You've just woken, if you can call it that, from a sleep as light as a reed mat, stirred by the soft clang of a handmade bell echoing across the stone courtyard. You've taken a vow of humility, silence, and routine, which is great, except the floor feels like it actively hates you. You rub your hands together for warmth, squinting in the dark as the monastery slowly creaks into motion like an old wooden door. The peace is real, though, so thick it feels like wool. And yes, before you ask, there's no mattress, no morning coffee, no Instagram to check. Just your soul, the mountain, and a schedule that hasn't changed in 800 years. And guess what? You probably wouldn't survive this for more than a day without crying. But lucky for you, tonight, you're only visiting. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing our sleepy little map of the world fill up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up slowly, your joints cracking like dry twigs. Around you, the sleeping quarters are hushed. No doors, just archways carved from ochre red stone. Your robe, coarse but clean, is already folded near your mat. You slip it on and shuffle toward the corridor, where a single oil lamp flickers. You don't need it. You've walked this path 1,000 times. Outside, the wind hums low through the fig trees. The monastery is perched on a cliff, far above the valley where villagers still sleep, wrapped in blankets and dreams. But up here, the world belongs to quiet things, owls, stones, memory. You walk past the chapel, small, square, topped with a cross that looks like it might float off in the wind. A few other monks are stirring too, ghosts in the fog. You don't speak. Not out of rudeness. Words are saved for prayers and psalms. This time of day is for listening. What are you listening for? The still voice of God, supposedly. But sometimes all you hear is your stomach complaining, or a goat snorting in its sleep. And that's fine too. You kneel beside a stone basin near the chapel entrance. The water inside is so cold it could startle a demon back to virtue. You splash it on your face, gasping. That counts as a spiritual awakening, right? Historically, Ethiopian monks followed a blend of ancient Judaic customs and Christian liturgical rhythms. Early rising wasn't just tradition, it was theology. They believed the hours before dawn were the holiest, something about the world being soft and thin like parchment, easier to write on with prayer. Inside the chapel, incense already curls from a bronze burner, thin and ghost-like. The scent, frankincense mixed with something sharp, maybe myrrh or dried juniper bark. You lower yourself onto the floor, crossing your legs, spine tall. No pews here. Just mats, calloused knees, and candlelight. The eldest monk begins chanting. You join in, your voice rusty but steady. The words are in Guizi, an ancient Semitic tongue even most villagers don't understand anymore. But that's not the point. The syllables wrap around you like a cloak, sacred through repetition. Wusto Lamamlakachu. Glory to your name. Your mind drifts slightly. The rhythm does that to you. Like waves. Like heartbeat. You think of a story the elder once told, about Saint Tekel Haymanot, who prayed standing on one foot for 7 years until the other foot literally rotted off. Historians still argue whether that's metaphor or just legendary overkill. Either way, it makes your current sore knee seem laughably manageable. A bat flits past the open arch outside. The sky begins to shift from black to blue. The chant continues. You lose track of time. The service ends not with applause, obviously, but with a long, mutual silence. You bow low to the floor, the stone cool against your forehead. Then you rise. Your body is awake now, but your mind, still swimming in incense and old syllables, drifts like a leaf in slow water. Outside again, you step into the world just beginning to blush with dawn. Mist coats everything, fig trees, roof tiles, even the goats, who already look annoyed that you exist. The sun hasn't quite breached the cliffs, but a silvery light starts seeping through. It's quiet, but not dead. Birds are beginning to clear their throats. One rooster crows early and seems very proud of it. You head to the small enclosure behind the chapel, where you'll start your chores. But for one moment, just one, you pause at the edge of the cliff. The wind plays with your robe. Below, the valley yawns open, patchwork fields, stone huts, and a thin line of smoke curling from someone's cooking fire. That's the real world. You live above it. Not because you're better, but because you've chosen to climb the metaphorical hill, and now you live on the literal one too. A bell rings behind you, just once, sharp and high. Time to get to work. Tomorrow is always built on routines. And in this monastery, that starts with hauling water and feeding some very judgy goats. You lift the wooden yoke across your shoulders, the 2 clay water jars clinking softly against your hips. They're not heavy yet, but they will be once you've filled them. The path to the well isn't far, just a few minutes walk down a slope behind the monastery walls. But it's rocky, steep, and this morning your sandals seem to have developed an intense aversion to staying on your feet. Still, you trudge forward, the yoke creaking slightly. The morning mist is fading now, traded for a crisp blue sky stretching wide like an open scroll. A line of eucalyptus trees shades the path, their long fingers dancing in the breeze. You pass Brother Iasis on the way. He's heading up with his own load of firewood and offers you a nod so solemn it feels like a medieval fist bump. At the base of the slope sits the well, stone-lined and ancient, said to be blessed by Saint Caleb himself. Historians still argue whether Caleb ever came this far inland, or if monks just love dropping names. Either way, the water's cold, clean, and the kind that could probably cure heartbreak if you're patient enough. You crank the rope slowly, the bucket descending into darkness. When it hits the surface, you hear the hollow splash echo upward. It's strangely satisfying. Then comes the harder part, lifting the full bucket back up. Your arms burn. Your robe's sleeves are soaked. And yes, your sandals finally give up and fling themselves off in opposite directions like drama queens. You fill both jars, rebalance the yoke, and start the climb back uphill. Every step sends a trickle of icy water down your side. Nature's cold brew, medieval edition. Once back inside the monastery walls, you head toward the livestock pen. The goats are already awake and deeply unimpressed with your existence. One of them, whom you've mentally named Saint Grumble, gives you a look that says, "Late again, heretic." You unlatch the wooden gate and step inside. Instantly, they surround you, nudging your legs, chewing your robe, and treating your kneecaps like salt licks. You reach into a burlap sack hanging from a peg and toss handfuls of barley onto the ground. The feeding frenzy begins, hooves clacking against stone, heads bumping. You pretend to be above it all, but secretly, you narrate the chaos like a wildlife documentary. That's Brother Gotimus, asserting dominance over the lentil patch. A bold move. One of the younger kids leaps onto a stone and bleats triumphantly. You almost applaud. Monasteries of the time weren't just spiritual sanctuaries. They were self-sustaining ecosystems. Goats provided milk. Chickens laid eggs. The monks grew barley, lentils, and herbs. They weren't prepping for the apocalypse exactly, but if the world ended, they'd probably be just fine. You check the watering trough. Low. Again. You trudge back to refill it, wondering if goats have any concept of gratitude. Spoiler, they do not. While the goats are distracted with food, you slip inside the small adjacent shed, more of a nook carved into the rock. Inside are tools, hose, baskets, bundles of dried grass, and your old enemy, the leaky bucket. You grab it anyway. A little to the side, you notice Brother Ariah's robe, neatly folded on a hook, even though he's probably in the chapel still debating angels per haystack theories with someone. You briefly consider switching your robe with his just to mess with him, but decide against it. You are, after all, aiming for sainthood. Back in the pen, you refill the trough and give the goats one last scratch behind the ears. Except Saint Grumble, who clearly considers physical affection a sin. Then you rinse your hands in a smaller basin by the gate. It's still early, but you already feel like you've done a full day's work. Welcome to monk life. Your next stop is the communal courtyard. Open sky above, gravel underfoot, and a single fig tree in the center. It's where monks gather quietly between tasks, sometimes to pray, sometimes to just sit. Today you sit. Only for a moment. The stone bench is cold, but the sun is beginning to stretch its fingers across the compound. You close your eyes. Somewhere nearby, a bird trills exactly 3 notes. You wonder if it rehearses. A young novice shuffles past with a broom too big for him. You resist the urge to offer help. He needs to learn. You remember when that was you, sweeping in wide, hopeful circles, dreaming of becoming a scribe, a healer, maybe even a hermit living alone in a mountaintop cave with one loyal goat and a spectacular beard. Instead, you're here, doing chores. And weirdly, you love it. There's something about the rhythm of it, carrying, feeding, cleaning, that pulls your thoughts into a soft hum, like bees under warm leaves. It's not glamorous. No one's making TikToks about ancient monastic goat routines. But there's peace in the repetition, and a strange kind of clarity in doing work that no one sees but everyone benefits from. Suddenly, a loud sneeze breaks the silence. Brother Tesfaye emerges from the chapel holding a straw broom and a scowl. "Too much incense," he mumbles, before launching into a detailed, whispered complaint about the overzealous burning of frankincense by the elder monks. You nod solemnly, because that's what one does when someone disrespects incense boundaries. He moves on. You return to the fig tree and touch its bark. Rough, ancient, possibly smug about how long it's been here. Some scholars believe fig trees like this were considered sacred in early Ethiopian Christianity, representing endurance and quiet wisdom. Then again, scholars also once argued that cats were secretly angels. The jury's still out on both. The bell rings again. Short, sharp, twice this time. You rise. It's time to wash and prepare for morning prayer. Again, you head toward the washing basin. But this time, it's not just your face you're cleaning. You'll need to scrub your hands, arms, and feet. A full-body spiritual refresh. The sun's higher now. The air's warming. And you already smell like goat. But hey, that's the smell of devotion. Your fingers linger in the cool water of the stone basin, cupping handfuls to rinse the dust from your feet. You know the routine. 3 full scoops for the face. 1 behind each ear, because your old mentor swore angels hide there when monks misbehave. And then the feet, which are always dirtier than you think and never grateful for your attention. You dry off with a square of worn linen tucked into your sash. It smells like thyme. Brother Gevre must have done the laundry yesterday. He always adds herbs, insists it invites the Holy Spirit. Or just confuses the goats. You slip off your outer robe, fold it carefully, and put on the smoother, lighter one reserved for morning prayers. It's still a little damp from last week's rain, but that's life at 8,000 feet above sea level. Nothing fully dries unless the sun personally approves of it. You walk barefoot across the gravel path toward the chapel, passing through an arched doorway framed in faded red and ochre paint. The door is open, always as during morning prayers. The light slants across the floor in sharp golden rectangles, catching the edges of the altar and setting the brass censer aglow. You slip in quietly and find your place on the cool stone floor, cross-legged beside Brother Tadel, whose snores once got mistaken for a minor earthquake. The chapel is small, no grand columns or Gothic flair here. It's carved partly from stone, partly assembled with clay and timber, and wholly scented with decades of incense. The ceiling is low, the windows mere slits, just wide enough to let in light but not distraction. A worn mosaic of the Archangel Michael decorates the eastern wall, his eyes always watching, his sword always mid-swing. The prayers begin, not sung but chanted deep and rhythmic like waves rolling across a desert. You join in, the syllables flowing from memory. Guizi, the liturgical language, always makes your mouth work harder than modern speech. Each phrase feels ancient, carved from the same rock as the monastery. Exiabere mesjen, amen. May God be praised, amen. The room seems to breathe with it. The chants rise, echoing off the low ceiling, brushing the tops of your ears. It's not loud, not harsh, just steady, like the heartbeat of something older than time. One of the senior monks leads a reading, his voice gravelly but rich. The passage is about fasting in the wilderness, about enduring silence and wind and temptation. You glance toward the window. The wilderness is right there. So is the wind. As for temptation, well, unless you count sneaking an extra fig, you're in the clear today. Historians still argue whether these morning services followed the same order across all Ethiopian monasteries. Some claim local traditions varied wildly. One abbey might chant the psalms while another just rang bells and hummed. But your monastery, like most in Tigray, is consistent. Structured. Anchored. You can tell the time of day by which verse is echoing through the chapel walls. When the chanting ends, everyone bows their heads in silence. A full minute passes. 2. Your knees ache, but you dare not shift. In this stillness, your mind does its usual cartwheels, wondering whether goats have dreams, whether figs ripen better with prayers, whether Brother Tadel ever truly wakes up. Then the bell chimes. The silence breaks like a bubble. You rise. Time for morning cleaning. Everyone disperses. Some head to the library to dust and straighten scrolls. Others to the kitchen. You've been assigned the latrines today. Again, you try not to take it personally. The latrine is a simple affair: wooden seat, stone-walled cubicle, and an impressively unpleasant smell that could probably chase away demons. Armed with a broom made of tied twigs and a bucket of ashes, you go to work. It's not glamorous, but oddly satisfying. You sweep, scrub, scatter ash, and hum quietly to yourself, a hymn about cleanliness being next to holiness, which you're pretty sure someone made up just to trick novices into volunteering for this gig. Just outside, Brother Johannes tends the herb garden. He's old, nearly blind, and has named every basil plant after a different saint. He claims Saint Juniper always smells the strongest. You believe him. As you finish, you pause by the garden and inhale. Lavender, mint, maybe a hint of whatever's fermenting in the pickling barrels. You almost feel refreshed. Almost. You return your tools to the utility hut, wash your hands again, twice, and stop by the granary to help unload fresh barley brought in by local farmers. The granary smells like dry bread and old socks, but you're used to it. You and two other monks form a line, passing baskets from cart to storeroom, your robes swaying with each lift. Some of the grain spills. The chickens celebrate like they've won the lottery. You try to shoo them away, but one flaps right into your face. Dignity equals gone. The chores blur into one another. You check the beehives carefully. One sting last week taught you not to hum near the queen. You haul small clay jars to the fermenting shed. You even patch a hole in the animal shed's roof using a thatch bundle and a prayer. Midday creeps in. The sun now filters through the leaves above, dappling the courtyard like spilled gold coins. The call for the second prayer of the day rings out, a slower chant, often done under the fig tree when the weather's kind. You join the others in the shade, the tree's branches forming a kind of leafy cathedral. As you kneel, a breeze rustles the leaves, making them whisper. Or maybe it's just your stomach. You haven't eaten yet. But first, more prayer. Always more prayer. This one's shorter, more meditative. A few psalms. A reflection from one of the elders about God being found in simple acts. You silently hope that includes cleaning latrines. Then comes the blessing of the meal, because yes, lunch is finally on its holy way. You shuffle toward the refectory with the others, robes brushing quietly against stone and soil. The smell hits you first: smoky lentils, faintly sweet flatbread, and a hint of wild garlic. Your stomach growls like a warning bell. You're not alone. Brother Michael clutches his middle dramatically, pretending he's about to faint. He does this every day. Inside, the refectory is nothing fancy. Stone floor, long wooden benches, and a high window where doves sometimes sit and stare like judgmental dinner guests. The table is set simply. Woven baskets hold injera, the spongy bread you grew up with, while terracotta bowls steam with shiro, lentil stew, seasoned with berbera so mild even the kittens can handle it. Before the meal begins, silence. You bow your head as the eldest monk, Abba Tuwadros, prays in slow, deliberate tones. You try not to open one eye to see how close the bread is. Temptation, thy name is sourdough. Then the clatter begins. Plates passed. Bowls shared. Injera torn in soft, skillful folds. You eat with your right hand, scooping stew and savoring each bite like it's the last food on earth. Which, given your chores this morning, it might as well be. A younger novice named Bekele tries to sneak a second helping before the blessing is finished. You jab him lightly with your elbow and raise an eyebrow. He sighs dramatically and waits, mouthing the words of the final Amen, like it's the hardest thing he's done all day. One historical fact you remember from the monastery's dusty scrolls. Ethiopian monastic meals were traditionally vegetarian, rooted in both faith and the practical need to conserve animals. Fish might be allowed on special days, but meat? Rare as a clean goat. And definitely not today. But here's the quirk. Some monks, centuries ago, believed garlic repelled not just demons but also gossip. So every meal, no matter how bland, had a clove tucked in somewhere. You can't say it works, though. You still hear plenty of chatter about who fell asleep during prayers, or who left their sandals in the goat pen again. Spoiler. It was you. After the meal, everyone files out slowly. No rush. No shouting. Just full bellies and warm sunlight. You pause by the water basin again, rinse your fingers, and pat your face. It's cooling now, the highland breeze curling down from the mountains. Next stop? Manuscript duty. You follow the side path to the scriptorium, a small stone chamber with two narrow windows, enough to let in light but not distraction. Inside, the air smells of ink, hide glue, and dust. A heavenly combo, If you ask any monk who's ever tried to erase 3 hours of work because a goat nudged the table, you settle onto a cushion near a low desk, laid out with sheets of vellum made from stretched calfskin. A bowl of ink sits nearby, charcoal black, mixed with a secret monastery recipe involving soot, tree sap, and oddly enough, pounded fig bark. The quills are carved from reeds gathered by the riverside, sharpened to a fine point with obsessive pride. Your task today is simple but tedious, copying a psalm. Not composing, not illuminating, just letters. Every loop, every angle, every flick of the wrist, measured sacred. You steady your hand. You begin. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. Each stroke makes a sound, soft, scratchy, oddly comforting. The room is quiet except for the occasional sneeze from Brother Malaku, whose allergies do not respect divine silence. Historians still argue, you recall, whether Ethiopian scriptoria used a strict rule system or relied on monkly instinct. You're pretty sure it's both. If you spell something wrong, instinct tells you to pray. Then erase. Then pray again. But here's a secret no one writes about. Monks sometimes hide doodles in the margins. Not always saints or symbols. Sometimes a sheep wearing a bishop's hat, or a little cat juggling figs. You've never done it yourself, of course. But you know a scroll in the library has a dancing rooster near Psalm 27. Just saying. Hours pass like fog drifting through the valley. You finish your psalm, blot the ink with a bit of dry cloth, and hold the parchment up to the light. Beautiful, if a little crooked. No one's perfect, not even scribes. Outside, the sun has shifted. Shadows stretch long. The air smells of pine and something baking. Maybe roasted barley, or one of those mysterious grain bricks Brother Tesfaye makes for special fasts. You hope it's not that. There's still time before evening prayers, so you head toward the garden for a little maintenance. Monks take turns tending the beds, some filled with vegetables, others just flowers for beauty's sake. You prefer the flowers. Less biting. More bees. You pluck weeds, hum a hymn, and find a beetle stubbornly clinging to your sandal. You nudge it off gently. Even beetles, you remind yourself, are part of the divine design. Unless they touch your lunch, then all bets are off. The wind rustles the trees again. A few birds call from the branches, hoarse, lopsided squawks that sound more like complaints than songs. Still, there's peace here. A kind of quiet magic in knowing your chores aren't distractions from holiness. They're holiness. Someone rings the bell, 3 slow chimes. Time to wash again. Evening prayers await. You trudge back toward the chapel, passing the same crooked rock, the same goat trying to squeeze through the same too small fence. You chuckle. Some things never change. Your hands splash again into the basin. Cool. Clean. Calming. You wipe them dry, adjust your robe, and step once more into the circle of song and shadow, where the day's light thins and the sacred night begins. The incense returns first. Just a whisper of frankincense and myrrh winding through the air like a sleepy dragon. You breathe it in slowly, your nostrils tickled with spice and with smoke. Then the chanting begins. Low, steady, and hauntingly beautiful. You slide onto your knees in the chapel, this time toward the back. The evening service isn't as long as matins, but it casts a deeper spell. Candles flicker in copper holders. The shadows stretch longer with every word spoken. You press your forehead to the cool floor, again and again, matching the rhythm of your breath to the cadence of the prayer. It's not easy. Your knees complain. Your spine threatens a small revolt. But the peace that settles in your chest, that makes it worth every creak and crack. Tonight's reading is from the Book of Enoch, a local favorite. You mouth the ancient phrases, half understanding, half dreaming. Ethiopian monks have preserved this sacred text for centuries, even when most of the Christian world forgot it existed. It's got fallen angels, cosmic secrets, and more visions than your Aunt Kitty after too much tej. You love it. Everyone does. Especially Brother Malaku, who insists he saw a 6-winged cherub in the laundry once. You believe him, mostly. But not everything is divine and dreamy. A small fly buzzes relentlessly around your ear. You try to wave it away subtly, but it returns like a tiny airborne sinner determined to interrupt your path to righteousness. You accept its presence, reluctantly. Even the most ancient chapels have bugs. After the final amen, the choir continues for a few quiet minutes. You close your eyes, just breathing, just listening. Then, like mist dissipating, the service ends. You rise slowly, body stiff but soul surprisingly light. You walk outside into the dusk. That's when you hear them, hyenas. Far off, but close enough to make the hairs on your neck wake up and say, "Nope." Their laughter isn't funny. It's wild, sharp, mocking, like a bad joke told by a worse person. You glance toward the hills. The monastery is fenced, stone-walled, and guarded by two hefty dogs with more scars than manners. You'll be fine. Still, you walk a little faster. Tonight's post-prayer chore? Fetching water from the well. Of course it is. You grab a torch and a clay jug, and set off down the narrow path that leads past the garden and toward the well house. Your sandals crunch on gravel. The flame flickers, and the moon, bless her, has decided not to show up tonight. The well sits under a thatched roof, protected by prayer scrolls pinned to the beams to ward off spirits. You tug the rope gently and hear the bucket drop, then a hollow splash. As you crank the bucket back up, hand over hand, you remember a legend Abba Tuwadros told you once, that a water spirit lives in this well. A small one. Not evil, just curious. It likes to make frogs disappear and turn water to honey. Historians still argue whether that's metaphor or hallucination, you recall with a smirk. The bucket emerges, cool and glistening. You pour the water carefully into your jug, seal it with a stopper, and begin the walk back. No hyenas. No spirits. Just the whisper of wind and your own heartbeat, steady as a bell's toll. Back in the compound, you drop off the jug near the kitchen and check in with the stable boy, young Amare. He's nodding off beside a bleeding goat. You nudge him awake. He startles and tries to pretend he wasn't sleeping by whispering a prayer mid-sentence. It doesn't work, but you let him save face. You were 12 once, too. You help him herd the goats into their enclosure. Well, attempt to herd them. Goats, as you know, have all the stubbornness of a camel and none of the dignity. One stares you down like it owes you money. Another tries to chew your robe. You sigh. The eternal struggle between man and goat continues. You finally get the gate latched, and Amare thanks you with a sleepy grin. He offers you a roasted barley ball from his pocket. You decline. You've seen where his pockets have been. With your extra moments before curfew, you take a slow walk around the outer wall. The stars are out now, thousands of them, winking in the clear Ethiopian sky. You tilt your head back and just stare. They say monks who meditate under the stars can sometimes hear the voice of God in the silence. You mostly hear Brother Michael's snoring from his cell, but hey, maybe divine messages come in many forms. One fact you do know. Ethiopian monks, especially those in the highlands, developed a form of star charting. Less for astrology and more for marking holy days and agricultural rhythms. Celestial monks, if you will. You like the idea. Ancient astronomers in sandals and wool cloaks, debating the moon's mood over a cup of teff porridge. Eventually, the night cools enough that your teeth chatter. You head inside, passing the dormitory threshold just as the night bell chimes. Perfect timing. Your cell is small. A low cot, a wooden chest, one candle, a faded icon of Saint Tekel Haymanot, the six-winged saint who stood on one foot in prayer for 7 years. You once tried that. Lasted 4 seconds. Got a cramp. Gained respect. You light the candle. The flame dances. You pull out your copy of the Psalms and skim a few lines by candlelight. Not reading so much as listening with your eyes. Then, the moment you've waited for, blessed, glorious, longed for sleep. You lie back, the straw mattress rough but familiar. You wrap your robe tighter, close your eyes, and hear nothing but the wind brushing the window. And then, because you're a monk, and because of course this would happen, you remember you left your sandals outside. You groan, but you don't get up. Let the hyenas enjoy them. You're already halfway to dreaming. You're up again before the sun, and your feet are cold. Not just slightly chilly cold. No, this is full. I left my sandals outside and I'm being punished by the morning dew cold. The stone floor feels like it's holding a grudge from the ice age. You shuffle to the door of your cell, peek outside. There they are. Your sandals, exactly where you left them, now damp and mildly chewed by a goat who apparently wanted a leather snack. You sigh, wipe them on your robe, and slide them on. A little wet, but survivable. And just like that, another day begins. The air smells like eucalyptus and wood smoke. The birds are louder than necessary, chirping in that overly cheery tone that makes you suspect they've never fasted. You rub your eyes, stretch your arms, and head to the refectory. Time for breakfast prep. You and 3 others are on food duty this week, and that means porridge. Again, always porridge. You stoke the fire with a piece of dry acacia. The kitchen has no chimney, So the smoke does what smoke does. It makes a slow spiral upward, then decides to stay and join the cooking party. You cough, blink, and keep stirring. This morning's special touch, a sprinkle of roasted flaxseed. It's the medieval version of adding a little flair. You may not have sugar, but you do have seeds, and honestly, you're proud of the upgrade. Monastic luxury. As the porridge simmers, you take a moment to step outside and grind some salt in the courtyard. Ethiopian monks often used salt blocks traded from the Danakil Depression, lugged in by camel caravans. You think about those camels as you pound away at the block with a stone pestle. You're not sure which is more stubborn, camels or your goat friend from last night. With bowls filled, you help serve your brothers. The eldest monk, Abba Marai, nods slowly at his portion as if awarding it a Michelin star. High praise. You eat in silence, as is the custom. The only sound is the occasional slurp, punctuated by the scrape of wooden spoons against clay bowls. After breakfast, you're summoned for a bit of calligraphy. Not your favorite chore, but today at least you get the nice ink. You settle into the scriptorium, a long, narrow room with low stools, a few windows, and piles of parchment made from goat hide. You sniff the ink. Smells like charcoal, gum arabic, and a little smugness. Because yes, your script is kind of beautiful when you try. You dip your reed pen, adjust your posture, and begin. The manuscript today is a psalter, written in Guizi, the ancient liturgical language. Your handwriting is the fourth best in the monastery, which would feel like an insult if there weren't 43 of you. As you write, your mind wanders, as it always does during copywork. You think about the legends, how monks in Debra Damo used to lower baskets down the cliffs to collect supplies from travelers. Some say they pulled up scrolls that glowed in the dark, or had margins that changed color depending on your mood. Historians still argue whether that's metaphor, fungus, or the power of extreme boredom. You chuckle softly and blot the ink. Brother Gideon, seated beside you, lets out a soft hum as he writes. He's composing an illuminated capital letter, T shaped like a lion. You glance over. It's beautiful, and slightly jealous-making. You quietly add a tiny fish into your margin. A little flourish of rebellion. Your next assignment, trimming vellum sheets. You pull out a curved knife and begin smoothing the edges. This part's oddly satisfying, like cutting wrapping paper perfectly on the first try. You resist the urge to create paper snowflakes. Barely. Eventually, you're relieved by Brother Tay, who is carrying his own reed pens like a knight carries swords. You wish him good luck and stretch your cramped legs. Outside, it's almost noon. The sun now beams down like an overenthusiastic lamp. You pass through the cloister garden, checking on the herbs. Basil, rue, and the ever-grumpy wormwood. You give the basil an encouraging nod. Next chore, mending the woven ceiling panels above the guest house. You climb the ladder, slowly and with much prayer. You've always hated heights, even small ones. The roof creaks. You mutter a psalm, more for your nerves than for the task, and begin reweaving the strips of bark and palm fronds. From this vantage point, you can see the village far below. Tiny huts with pointed thatched roofs. Little trails like stitching between them. Children chasing chickens. Smoke curling lazily from cooking fires. You wave to no one in particular, and someone waves back. Do they even know you're a monk? You mutter, tying the last knot and slowly making your way down again, one shaky step at a time. Once your feet are safely back on the blessed ground, you take a moment to breathe. And then time for a proper bath. Bathing happens near the spring behind the orchard. Not every day, but today the sun is high and your armpits have opinions. You slip into the cool stream, behind a screen of reeds and stones. The water stings at first. Mountain streams are not known for their hospitality. But soon you're scrubbing with a handful of soapberries, enjoying the simple feeling of not smelling like goats, ink, and ceiling dust. You spot a tiny frog watching you from a rock. Don't judge, you tell it. I fast more than you. You return cleaner, calmer, and wrapped in your robe like a victorious gladiator of hygiene. You lay the wet underrobe on a line to dry, and head off barefoot across warm stones. Dry feet at last. Before the bell rings for midday prayers, you have a few minutes to rest. You lean under the shadow of a fig tree, listening to the buzz of bees and distant ringing cowbells. Someone is reciting Guizi poetry nearby, the rhythmic syllables lilting through the air. You close your eyes. You don't understand every word, but the sound feels like music, like breath, like the pause between moments. They say that Ethiopian monks, especially in the 12th century, often memorized entire books of scripture. chanting them aloud to keep the words fresh. Some could recite the Gospels backwards. Others, it's rumored, could quote both testaments and tell you which plant helped with ulcers. Multitasking, medieval edition. You smile. You've memorized Psalm 91 and a few choice insults from Brother Elias. Close enough. The bell rings. Time to rise. Time to pray. Always time. The bell's deep clang reverberates through your ribs like a gentle shove from God himself. Not rude, just insistent. Time to realign. You brush fig dust from your robe, slide on your sandals, still goat-scratched but dry, and shuffle toward the chapel. Midday prayers are quieter than morning ones. Fewer yawns. Less shuffling. More precision. You find your spot in the long line of bowed heads and slip into rhythm. The liturgy in Guizi rolls off your tongue like honey over warm bread, familiar and ancient. You don't think about the words. Your mouth just knows what to say. It's like breathing, but with incense. Today, the chapel smells like burned frankincense and something else. Clove, maybe? It curls in your nose, settling behind your eyes. You resist the urge to sneeze. Barely. Across the room, Brother Gideon is kneeling so still. You think he might be asleep with his eyes open. Not unheard of. Once, Brother Jonas snored through an entire vigil without changing posture. It was almost impressive. After the final prayer, short and clean, like a punctuation mark, you rise and exit into sunlight that now feels like it's been turned up 2 notches. Time for a walk. Not leisure. No, this is the carry a sack of lentils to the neighboring hermit walk. Technically a chore, but secretly your favorite. You throw the sack over your shoulder, nod to Abba Marai, and head out the south gate. The path is narrow and winding, carved between terraced hills and lined with stones worn smooth by centuries of feet just like yours. On the way, you pass a sycamore tree with a hollow trunk. Local children say a leopard once lived in there and prayed 5 times a day. Historians still argue whether that's a metaphor for the monastic guard dog or just village exaggeration. Either way, you keep walking. The air smells of dust and sun-warmed grass. Bees hover lazily. A hawk circles above, doing its slow, bossy glide. You pause briefly at a carved stone, an old milestone marked with a faint cross and the words, "Strength is in the Lord." You trace the carving with your finger, then move on. The hermit's hut appears like a secret in the hillside, cloaked in vines and flanked by 2 loitering goats. Brother Keelisle, the hermit in question, appears out of a shadow like a magician. He hasn't cut his beard in 11 years. Or, by the smell of things, his toenails. You bow, he bows lower, and the 2 of you exchange exactly 4 words. Peace to you. And to you. You leave the lentils, receive a jar of smoked honey in return, and turn back home. No one keeps track of these exchanges, but somehow they always balance. On your way back, you veer off the main path to sit at a small, crumbling shrine dedicated to Saint Tekel Haymanot, the monk who, legend says, prayed standing on one leg for 7 years until the other leg gave out. You consider this for a moment. You can barely kneel for 30 minutes without losing feeling in your toes. 7 years. Either holy stamina, or a really bad bench situation. A butterfly lands on your shoulder. You freeze. It's large, patterned like a mosaic. You whisper a psalm under your breath as it flutters away. You arrive back just in time for the garden check-in. You join Brother Tay and Sister Wubbulum from the nunnery down the hill. She brings seeds and sharp opinions. Today's debate: whether it's too early to harvest the lentils. You say nothing and listen. The trick to monastery life isn't winning arguments. It's surviving them with your soul intact. The 3 of you end up agreeing. Harvest tomorrow. After all, the moon is shifting. And lentils, apparently, respect lunar schedules more than humans do. You return the honey to the pantry and sneak a spoonful. Not strictly allowed. But then again, neither was feeding dried berries to the donkey. And he's still your best friend here. Afternoon sun paints long shadows. It's cooler now. Next on your list, polishing the sacred chalice. You step into the storage room, dim, hushed, and lined with wooden cabinets that smell of frankincense and centuries. You find the chalice wrapped in linen and place it gently on a bench. It's bronze, etched with tiny lions and vines, passed down through generations. As you rub beeswax into the metal, the carvings catch the light and seem to dance. You hum a slow tune. Maybe it's a hymn. Maybe it's just the sound your grandmother used to make when grinding flour. Either way, it fits. They say the chalice once belonged to an emperor's chapel, that it survived fire, flood, and a camel stampede. Historians still argue whether camel stampede, is literal or just poetic shorthand for bad year. You finish your polish and bow slightly before wrapping it again. There's a quiet satisfaction in doing something small and doing it well. You step outside again. Someone is ringing a bell not for prayers, but for visitors. A small group of travelers has arrived, 2 merchants, a weaver, and their wide-eyed child. You greet them with a practiced smile and offer cool water from the clay jug by the entrance. The child stares at you like you've descended from a cloud. You reach behind your back and pull a fig from your sleeve. Hand it over. The kid grins and scurries off. Hospitality is sacred here, even if you smell like beeswax and lentils. The guests are shown to the shade pavilion while you and another monk prepare a light evening snack: flatbread, honey, and roasted chickpeas. You carry the trays barefoot, balancing them like relics. The child offers you a tiny rock as payment. You accept it solemnly. Sunset now bleeds into the sky, staining the horizon gold and rose. You sit by the fig tree again, nursing a warm cup of tej. Honey wine, just a sip, brewed for feast days but sometimes slipped into evenings like this. You listen to the weaver tell tales of a city where walls are painted with stars and goats where bells carved from silver. Probably exaggerated, but still, it makes the bread taste better. As night drapes over the monastery, you help stow the visitors' packs and light the small lanterns along the corridor. The flame light dances on the walls like sleepy fireflies. You think about how many tiny, quiet acts fill your day. Each one forgettable alone, but together, like beads on a prayer rope, they hold everything together. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The bell's deep clang reverberates through your ribs like a gentle shove from God himself. Not rude, just insistent. Time to realign. You brush fig dust from your robe, slide on your sandals, still goat-scratched but dry, and shuffle toward the chapel. Midday prayers are quieter than morning ones. Fewer yawns. Less shuffling. More precision. You find your spot in the long line of bowed heads and slip into rhythm. The liturgy in Guizi rolls off your tongue like honey over warm bread, familiar and ancient. You don't think about the words. Your mouth just knows what to say. It's like breathing, but with incense. Today, the chapel smells like burned frankincense and something else. Clove, maybe? It curls in your nose, settling behind your eyes. You resist the urge to sneeze. Barely. Across the room, Brother Gideon is kneeling so still. You think he might be asleep with his eyes open. Not unheard of. Once, Brother Jonas snored through an entire vigil without changing posture. It was almost impressive. After the final prayer, short and clean like a punctuation mark, you rise and exit into sunlight that now feels like it's been turned up 2 notches. Time for a walk. Not leisure. No, this is the carry a sack of lentils to the neighboring hermit walk. Technically a chore, but secretly your favorite. You throw the sack over your shoulder, nod to Abba Marai, and head out the south gate. The path is narrow and winding, carved between terraced hills and lined with stones worn smooth by centuries of feet just like yours. On the way, you pass a sycamore tree with a hollow trunk. Local children say a leopard once lived in there and prayed 5 times a day. Historians still argue whether that's a metaphor for the monastic guard dog or just village exaggeration. Either way, you keep walking. The air smells of dust and sun-warmed grass. Bees hover lazily. A hawk circles above, doing its slow, bossy glide. You pause briefly at a carved stone, an old milestone marked with a faint cross and the words, "Strength is in the Lord." You trace the carving with your finger, then move on. The hermit's hut appears like a secret in the hillside, cloaked in vines and flanked by 2 loitering goats. Brother Keelisle, the hermit in question, appears out of a shadow like a magician. He hasn't cut his beard in 11 years. Or, by the smell of things, his toenails. You bow, he bows lower, and the 2 of you exchange exactly 4 words. Peace to you. And to you. You leave the lentils, receive a jar of smoked honey in return, and turn back home. No one keeps track of these exchanges, but somehow, they always balance. On your way back, you veer off the main path to sit at a small, crumbling shrine dedicated to Saint Tekel Haymanot, the monk who, legend says, prayed standing on one leg for 7 years until the other leg gave out. You consider this for a moment. You can barely kneel for 30 minutes without losing feeling in your toes. 7 years. Either holy stamina, or a really bad bench situation. A butterfly lands on your shoulder. You freeze. It's large, patterned like a mosaic. You whisper a psalm under your breath as it flutters away. You arrive back just in time for the garden check-in. You join Brother Tay and Sister Wubbulum from the nunnery down the hill. She brings seeds and sharp opinions. Today's debate: whether it's too early to harvest the lentils. You say nothing and listen. The trick to monastery life isn't winning arguments. It's surviving them with your soul intact. The three of you end up agreeing. Harvest tomorrow. After all, the moon is shifting. And lentils, apparently, respect lunar schedules more than humans do. You return the honey to the pantry and sneak a spoonful. Not strictly allowed. But then again, neither was feeding dried berries to the donkey, and he's still your best friend here. Afternoon sun paints long shadows. It's cooler now. Next on your list, polishing the sacred chalice. You step into the storage room, dim, hushed, and lined with wooden cabinets that smell of frankincense and centuries. You find the chalice wrapped in linen and place it gently on a bench. It's bronze, etched with tiny lions and vines, passed down through generations. As you rub beeswax into the metal, the carvings catch the light and seem to dance. You hum a slow tune. Maybe it's a hymn. Maybe it's just the sound your grandmother used to make when grinding flour. Either way, it fits. They say the chalice once belonged to an emperor's chapel, that it survived fire, flood, and a camel stampede. Historians still argue whether camel stampede is literal or just poetic shorthand for bad year. You finish your polish and bow slightly before wrapping it again. There's a quiet satisfaction in doing something small and doing it well. You step outside again. Someone is ringing a bell not for prayers, but for visitors. A small group of travelers has arrived. 2 merchants, a weaver, and their wide-eyed child. You greet them with a practiced smile and offer cool water from the clay jug by the entrance. The child stares at you like you've descended from a cloud. You reach behind your back and pull a fig from your sleeve. Hand it over. The kid grins and scurries off. Hospitality is sacred here, even if you smell like beeswax and lentils. The guests are shown to the shade pavilion while you and another monk prepare a light evening snack: flatbread, honey, and roasted chickpeas. You carry the trays barefoot, balancing them like relics. The child offers you a tiny rock as payment. You accept it solemnly. Sunset now bleeds into the sky, staining the horizon gold and rose. You sit by the fig tree again, nursing a warm cup of tej. Honey wine, just a sip, brewed for feast days but sometimes slipped into evenings like this. You listen to the weaver tell tales of a city where walls are painted with stars and goats where bells carved from silver. Probably exaggerated, but still it makes the bread taste better. As night drapes over the monastery, you help stow the visitors' packs and light the small lanterns along the corridor. The flame light dances on the walls like sleepy fireflies. You think about how many tiny, quiet acts fill your day. Each one forgettable alone, but together, like beads on a prayer rope, they hold everything together. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The bell doesn't wake you, your body does. Like it always does. Some ancient whisper in your bones says, "Hey, time to be holy again," and you sit up before the clang even begins. It's still the middle of the night. The kind of darkness that makes you question whether light ever existed at all. You fumble for your sandals and shuffle silently down the corridor. The other monks move like shadows too, draped in their white shama, barely distinguishable from one another in the dim flicker of the corridor torches. Nobody talks. The silence is a kind of reverence, or maybe just practical. No one wants to be the one who breaks the spell. You reach the chapel and step inside. Tonight's vigil is long. They all are. But somehow this one stretches even more. Maybe because your shoulders ache from lantern duty, or because your stomach is quietly reminding you that dinner was lentils. Again, you settle into the rhythm. Chant. Breathe. Stand. Bow. Sit. Repeat. You listen to the cantor's voice echoing through the stone chapel, rising and falling like waves against a cliff. Some of the verses tonight come from the Book of Enoch, one of those mysterious texts that isn't officially in the Bible, but every Ethiopian monk knows by heart. Angels marrying humans, giants roaming the earth, apocalyptic warnings. It's basically the medieval equivalent of a blockbuster film. One fringe theory even says Enoch was taken by aliens. You heard that from a traveling priest once. Everyone laughed, except the librarian, who quietly took notes. At some point, your mind drifts, as it often does during these hours. You think of the fig tree behind the granary, the way it bends as if bowing to no one in particular. You think of the boy with the rock, and whether he ever skipped it across the stream like he wanted. You think of your sister in the village, married now, with 2 noisy sons, and whether she's awake feeding one of them. Your thoughts are interrupted by the sudden thump of a monk snoring mid-psalm. There's a pause in the chanting. Then the snoring stops. Then, without comment, the cantor continues. That's the thing about the night vigil. It's not about perfection. It's about being present, even when you're dozing a little. After a final amen, you leave the chapel and step into the night. The stars are fading now, being slowly eaten by the horizon. A cool breeze brushes your cheek as if to say, "Good job." Almost there. But no rest yet. Now comes the monastery's most peculiar job, the dawn tasks. These are the chores no one talks about, but everyone respects. The things that need to happen before anyone else wakes up. You're assigned to laundry. That doesn't mean folding socks. You haul buckets of water from the spring, which is thankfully just down the hill, and carry them to the washing stones near the southern wall. The sun is barely a whisper on the edge of the earth, but the water already stings your fingers. You scrub robes in rhythmic circles, lifting each one and slapping it against the stone. Thwack! Thwack! It echoes like a lazy drumbeat. Fun fact: 12th century monastic soap is made from ash, lime, and goat fat. Smells unique. You try not to breathe through your nose too much. As you rinse a particularly grimy robe, a small frog hops out of the sleeve. You jump. The frog jumps. You both stare at each other for a moment, then part ways respectfully. This is followed by the great hanging ritual. Clean robes must be draped along the cedar lines that stretch between the chapel and the granary. But the birds, especially the chatty ones, love to sit on them. You wave your arms dramatically, a lone monk fencing invisible sparrows, until they retreat to the fig tree. By the time you finish, the horizon is beginning to glow gold. Not sunlight yet, but the promise of it. The kind that makes you squint and smile and feel like something is waking up inside you, too. You check the time using the monastery's least accurate sundial, the kitchen rooster. He crows, once, then again, then 3 more times as if trying to get an encore. That means breakfast prep. You head to the small kitchen house where Brother Iasis is already grinding barley. You join him, reaching for the grindstone, and together you work the rhythm, back and forth, until the grain becomes fine flour. This flour will be used to make kinche, a warm barley porridge with spiced butter. Simple, nourishing, and likely older than the walls around you. You stoke the fire under the clay stove. The smoke curls up and out the open slats, carrying with it the scent of old wood and the faint sweetness of barley. Cooking, in a way, is its own kind of prayer. You stir slowly, watching the mixture thicken. The quiet crackle of the fire is almost like a hymn. No chanting, no bells, just heat and breath and barley. When the first rays of sunlight finally push over the horizon, the courtyard begins to stir. You hear shuffling feet, a cough or two, the creak of a door opening. Soon, the monks will line up with their wooden bowls, silently thankful for warm food. But before that, you take your own bowl and step outside. You sit on the chapel steps, steam rising from your breakfast, and watch the day unfold. A hawk circles above. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd calls to his goats. The world is waking up, stretching its limbs, rubbing its eyes. You take a slow bite of kinche. It tastes like barley, smoke, and effort. And something else too, something harder to name. Maybe it's peace. Or maybe it's just really good butter. You hear laughter. A young monk drops his bowl, sending porridge flying. He bows apologetically. You wave it off. It happens. Every morning is imperfect. But it still begins again. You finish your meal, rinse your bowl, and return it to the washing basin. No one tells you what to do next, but you already know. You'll check on the beehives again. Refill the water jugs. Maybe mend that torn curtain in the chapel, if there's time before copying begins. Because the peace of monastic life isn't just about prayers and silence. It's also about porridge, frogs in sleeves, and catching the morning light before it disappears behind a cloud. The morning sun has climbed a little higher by the time you leave the kitchen. Your hands still smell faintly of barley and ash. You pull your shama tighter around your shoulders. The breeze isn't quite warm yet, and make your way toward the apiary. Bees in the 12th century Ethiopian highlands are legendary for more than just honey. Their hives are symbols of community, industry, and oddly enough, spiritual protection. Some say that if you listen closely, you can hear the hum of angels mingling with the buzzing. You approach the wooden boxes arranged carefully along the stone wall. Smoke curls gently from a small smoker, sending the bees into a gentle lull. You lift the top of the first hive, careful not to crush any occupants. The scent of honey and wax fills your nostrils, mingling with the crisp mountain air. Historians still argue whether bees were first introduced to Ethiopia from the Mediterranean or if they evolved uniquely here. Either way, you're grateful for their industriousness. Without them, there would be no honey to sweeten the bitter coffee you'll drink later. Your task is to harvest some honeycomb without angering the colony. The bees hum a low buzz as if cautioning you. You work slowly, carefully breaking off the glistening honey-laden combs and placing them into a woven basket. A drop of honey slips onto your finger, sticky and sweet. You taste it, savoring the richness, the product of thousands of tiny workers toiling in unseen harmony. An old monk once told you that bees are like prayers. They're small, seemingly insignificant, but together they create something powerful. You carry the basket back toward the monastery, aware of the warm sun beginning to glow on your skin. You pass the fig tree again, now vibrant with birds and insects. A cheeky weaver bird darts past, carrying a blade of grass for its nest. You smile. You remember how awkward your own attempts at weaving had been. The knots never held, the threads never stayed straight. You still joke that if you had to build a nest for survival, you'd be the first to starve. Next, you visit the herb garden, a small patch behind the dining hall, bursting with rosemary, rue, and a mysterious, pungent herb called besabila. The air is fragrant, almost intoxicating, and you brush your hand over the leaves. These plants aren't just for cooking. They're medicine, incense, and sometimes protection from evil spirits. There's a quirky tale here. Some believe rubbing besabila leaves on your skin can ward off scorpions and snakes. No guarantees, but worth a try if you ask me. You pluck a few sprigs and tuck them into your robe for later use. The herbalist monk, a spry old man with a beard that looks like a wild tangle of roots, nods approvingly as you pass. You're reminded that monks here are more than just prayers. They're healers, farmers, and caretakers. The monastery is a small self-sustaining village, with each brother playing a vital role. Back inside, the scriptorium buzzes quietly with activity. The walls are lined with scrolls and books, many painstakingly copied from ancient manuscripts. Today, your job is to copy a section of the Psalms, the handwriting neat and deliberate. Writing here isn't just transcription. It's devotion, a form of meditation. Every letter carved with care, every word whispered as you write. You dip your quill into the ink made from soot and gum arabic, the tip trembling slightly. Historians still argue whether early Ethiopian manuscripts were influenced more by Coptic scripts or indigenous Guizi script traditions. Whatever the case, the written word here is sacred. As you trace the flowing lines of Guizi letters, your mind wanders to the early days of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, when these texts were hidden in caves to protect them from invaders. You think about how fragile knowledge is and how lucky you are to hold even a small piece of it. Your hand cramps and you shake it out, smiling at the irony that centuries from now, some scholar might debate whether this exact psalm was copied in 1103 or 1104. Around you, the quiet scratching of quills and rustling of parchment forms a gentle chorus, broken only by the occasional cough or whispered prayer. By midday, your fingers are stained with ink, your back aches, and the sun is high enough to cast warm patterns through the small lattice windows. You rise and stretch, relieved to leave the scriptorium for the courtyard. There, a few monks tend to the vegetable garden, carrots, onions, and beans growing in neat rows. You join them for a moment, pulling weeds and chatting quietly. The garden is your favorite place to sneak a bit of solitude. Even here, though, life is communal and peaceful. A stray dog wanders past, sniffing the air. You offer it a crust of bread, which it accepts gratefully before disappearing behind the chapel. As you walk back to the dormitory, you pause at the small chapel window and glance inside. The altar glows softly with beeswax candles, flickering like ancient stars. You breathe deeply, feeling the pulse of the monastery, the rhythm of prayers, chores, meals, and rest. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. And the day after. Because that's what being a 12th-century Ethiopian monk means. Simple, steady, holy. Even when you're covered in ink and honey. You wake up before dawn again, your body still adjusted to the early rhythm. The courtyard is a cool wash of gray, shadows stretching long across the flagstones. Your feet pad softly on the cold ground as you head toward the church, the heart of the monastery. Inside, the air is thick with incense and the scent of burning beeswax candles. The flickering light casts dancing shadows on the ancient murals depicting saints and angels, their faces serene yet intense. You find your place among the other monks, sitting cross-legged on the stone floor as the choir begins the morning chant. The sound is hypnotic, low and resonant, echoing off the high ceilings. You feel it in your chest, a vibration as old as the stones beneath you. This is the kaides, the divine liturgy, and it's more than just prayer. It's a full sensory experience designed to bring the spirit closer to God. The chants are in Guizi, the ancient language, which you understand mostly by heart now, but still sounds mysterious to your ears. Historians still argue whether the Ethiopian liturgy was influenced primarily by early Jewish traditions or by Coptic Christianity, but what matters here is the reverence. The rhythmic sway of the priests clad in white robes embroidered with crosses, the gentle clapping of hands, the ringing of tiny silver bells. It all feels like being wrapped in a sacred song. You try to focus, but your mind drifts briefly to the goat you had to chase out of the herb garden this morning. How did it get in there again? Maybe it wanted some besibila too. After the long chant, you stand and follow the procession around the church. The priests carry a golden cross and sacred texts, the congregation following in quiet procession. The flicker of candlelight on gilded surfaces dazzles your eyes. You remember the story that the Ark of the Covenant is said to reside in Ethiopia's Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. Some say it's true, others doubt fiercely. Historians still argue whether such a relic ever left Jerusalem, or was actually brought here centuries ago. As the service ends, the abbot gives a short blessing, and you file out with the others into the brightening day. The workday truly begins now. You join the brothers in repairing the monastery's stone walls. Using simple tools, hammer, chisel, and mortar, you chip away at loose stones, resetting them carefully. The work is hard but satisfying. Each stone laid is a small act of devotion. You pause and wipe sweat from your brow, the sun climbing steadily now, warming your skin beneath your robe. Nearby, a young novice struggles with a heavy sack of grain. You step in to help, exchanging a few words in Amharic and sharing a brief laugh over the novice's awkward fumbling. You recall a curious fact. Ethiopian monasteries often kept granaries within their walls as protection against famines and raids. It's a reminder of how self-contained and prepared these communities were. Later, you gather with some brothers to grind the grain for the next meal, using a hand-powered millstone. The slow turning, the rough grind between stones, the faint whir of dust, it's a simple, grounding ritual. One of the older monks mentions a recent debate. Did Ethiopian monks use camel dung as fuel in their lamps, or was it more commonly cow dung? Historians still argue about these tiny details, but either way, it's not the most glamorous part of monastic life. During the midday meal, you sit quietly in the refectory. The food is plain, injera bread, lentils, and a small cup of spiced honey wine for special occasions. You eat slowly, mindful of the flavors and textures. The conversations are soft, respectful, mostly about scripture and the day's tasks. Occasionally, a joke slips through, breaking the solemnity. You catch one about a monk who tried to baptize a goat by mistake. It still makes you smile. After the meal, you retreat to the shade of a fig tree, the same one buzzing with life from earlier. The tree's leaves rustle gently in the breeze, and you close your eyes briefly, listening. This moment of quiet is precious. It grounds you, reminds you of the steady, peaceful rhythm of monastic life, and the small joys hidden within. As the afternoon sun begins to lower, you ready yourself to copy more manuscripts, tend the bees again, and prepare for evening prayers. You think about the cycle, chant, work, study, rest, and how each part fits together like the stones in the monastery's walls. And despite the early mornings and the hard labor, you wouldn't trade this life for anything. Not even for a lifetime supply of that honey you harvested yesterday. The day drifts toward late afternoon, and you find yourself heading down the worn stone path toward the monastery's modest orchard. The air is sweet with ripening fruit and the earth's quiet musk. Here, the branches of pomegranate and fig trees droop low, heavy with promise. Your hands, still slightly sticky from the honey earlier, brush against the rough bark as you navigate between trees. The orchard is your favorite place to clear your mind after a day filled with prayers and work. You pause beneath a fig tree, gazing up at the deep green leaves dappled with golden sunlight. Somewhere above, a small colony of weaver birds chat and weave their nests with impressive dexterity. A reminder that nature, like the monastery, thrives on patient craftsmanship. The monks often say that tending the orchard is like tending the soul. Both need patience, care, and a quiet respect for growth. You pluck a ripe fig, its skin warm and tender, and take a bite. The sweetness fills your mouth, a small reward for the day's labors. The orchard is also a place for reflection and occasional debate. Today, you overhear the abbot discussing the origins of the monastery's trees with a visiting scholar. Some believe that certain fruit trees were brought by early Christian traders from the Mediterranean, while others argue they are native to Ethiopia, adapted over centuries. Historians still argue whether the fig tree was truly one of the first cultivated fruits in this region or a later addition. You wander deeper into the orchard and find a patch of wild herbs growing among the roots: thyme, basil, and a curious purple-leaved plant you've always been told is sacred, though no one quite remembers why. You recall the quirky tale that monks once used fig leaves as makeshift pages for quick notes when parchment was scarce. Imagine scribbling prayers on leaves that wilt away by morning. Nearby, a goat lazily chews on a stray branch, completely ignoring your presence. Goats here are both a blessing and a mischief maker. They provide milk and meat, but have a tendency to wander where they shouldn't. As you pick more fruit, you notice the sky beginning to shift, a soft pink and orange glow spreading across the horizon. The evening is approaching, and with it, the cycle of prayer and rest. You carry your bounty back toward the monastery, passing the stony cloisters where a few monks sit in quiet conversation. The worn cobblestones beneath your feet seem to hum with centuries of footsteps. Inside, the aroma of spiced coffee fills the air. Someone has already begun the ritual of roasting the beans. Ethiopian coffee ceremonies are sacred here, a moment of hospitality and fellowship that brings warmth beyond the cup. You think about the slow roasting and grinding, the careful pouring of water over the grounds in a clay pot called a jabina. The coffee's earthy bitterness is tempered by the honey you harvested earlier, a subtle sweetness that lingers on your tongue. After the coffee, you join the brothers in the chapel for evening prayers, the candlelight casting gentle shadows once more. The chants feel different now, softer, slower, as if the whole monastery is winding down. You settle into the rhythm, the words wrapping around you like a warm blanket. Your eyelids grow heavy. Before sleep, you take a moment to step outside into the cool night air. The stars blaze above with a clarity impossible in the cities. The Milky Way stretches across the sky, a river of light that has watched over this place for centuries. You wonder how many monks have stood here before you, gazing upward, feeling both small and infinite. In this quiet, peaceful moment, you realize that the daily chores, the prayers, the bees, and the orchard, all are threads woven into the same timeless fabric. You breathe deeply, ready for rest, knowing tomorrow will bring the same steady rhythm. And you'll be here, in this ancient monastery, living a life both simple and sacred. Night deepens, and you find yourself drawn to the small workshop tucked away near the kitchen. It's a place filled with the soft scent of wood shavings and the quiet scratch of quills on parchment. Here, the monks preserve knowledge, carefully copying manuscripts by hand, word by patient word. You settle into your usual seat, a rough-hewn wooden bench bathed in the gentle glow of an oil lamp. The flickering light plays on the pages in front of you, illuminating the intricate script and vivid illustrations of saints, angels, and biblical scenes. This is more than just work. It's an act of devotion, a way to connect with the past and safeguard wisdom for future generations. The monks have been doing this for centuries, their calligraphy styles evolving, yet rooted in tradition. You remember reading that Ethiopian manuscripts are often written on specially prepared parchment made from animal skins, which gives each page a rich texture and longevity. Some of these manuscripts date back to the 4th century, an astonishing continuity of faith and art. Historians still argue whether certain illuminated manuscripts were produced solely within Ethiopian monasteries, or if some elements came from Coptic Egypt or Byzantine influences. The debate adds a layer of mystery to these precious texts. As you dip your quill into ink made from soot and plant extracts, you focus on the delicate task of replicating each letter. Mistakes are not easily fixed. One slip can mean starting a page anew. The repetitive motion is soothing, almost meditative, and your mind drifts to the curious ritual of binding these books. The covers are often made from thick wooden boards covered with leather, sometimes adorned with crosses or protective charms believed to ward off evil. You pause to glance at an unfinished illustration, a vibrant depiction of the Archangel Michael, sword raised, wings spread wide. The colors are vivid, made from minerals and plants ground into powders, mixed with natural binders. One of the monks whispers a light joke about a fellow scribe who once accidentally inked his beard instead of the page. The chuckle breaks the quiet tension, and you smile. You wonder about the life of those who created these manuscripts long before you. Did they also feel the weight of preserving such sacred words? Did their hands tremble like yours? As the night wears on, the monastery grows quieter. Outside, the occasional hoot of an owl punctuates the stillness. The ink dries on your page, and you carefully set down your quill. The satisfaction of a day's work done right lingers. You fold the parchment gently, ready to continue tomorrow. The written word, like the chants and the bees in the orchard, is a thread woven into this monastic life, a tapestry of patience, faith, and quiet beauty. You stretch and yawn, feeling the familiar pull of sleep. Tomorrow will come soon enough, with its prayers, chores, and rituals. For now, the quiet of the workshop wraps around you like a soft cloak. The chill of early morning nudges you awake before dawn. Outside, the sky is a faint bruise of navy and lavender, promising the slow birth of a new day. You dress quietly, pulling on your woolen robe, the fabric rough against your skin but comforting in its weight. Stepping outside, the crisp air carries the scent of damp earth and a faint smokiness from the communal fire. The monastery stirs slowly. Distant murmurs of monks preparing for the first prayers mingle with the soft rustling of leaves. Your task this morning is simple yet vital. Fetch water from the nearby spring. It's a daily pilgrimage, a small but necessary chore that connects you to the land and to centuries of monks who came before. The path is uneven, worn smooth by countless bare feet, winding through groves of olive and acacia trees. Dew clings to the grass, sparkling like tiny jewels in the dim light. At the spring, the water bubbles clear and cold, a source of life nestled in the rocky landscape. You lower the clay jug, watching as the water fills, cool and refreshing. You pause, cupping the water in your hands to drink. It tastes fresh, almost sweet, a stark contrast to the boiled, spiced coffee you'll have later. Legends say that this spring was blessed by a saint centuries ago, and some monks still dip their fingers in it before prayers, hoping for a touch of divine favor. Historians still argue whether this tale is myth or rooted in actual pilgrimages by early Ethiopian Christians. As you fill the jug, you notice small fish darting beneath the surface, tiny creatures that somehow survive in this cool pool year-round. The spring is more than a water source. It's a microcosm of life, a quiet reminder of nature's resilience. On your way back, you pass a patch of wildflowers, bright yellow daisies and delicate blue flax. Their colors seem almost too vivid against the muted browns and greens of the monastery walls. You remember a quirky tradition you heard about. Monks sometimes use petals from these flowers to decorate the sacred manuscripts during feast days, believing it brings blessings to the words within. Carrying the water back, you think about how this daily trek grounds you. It's a simple chore, but it connects your body and spirit, reminding you of the monastery's rhythm and your place within it. You arrive just as the first bell tolls, signaling the beginning of morning prayers. You set the jug down carefully and join the brothers in the chapel, the fresh water a small but vital offering to the day ahead. Your hands still damp, your heart steady, you prepare to lift your voice and chant once more, feeling the ancient rhythms settle into your bones. The day winds down gently, and you find yourself on the monastery's stone terrace, watching as the sun slips behind distant hills, casting long shadows over the valley below. The air cools, carrying the scent of wood smoke and wild herbs from the fields. You sit quietly, letting the peaceful hush of evening settle around you like a soft blanket. The monastery feels suspended in time, a place where the outside world's chaos barely reaches. Tonight, your thoughts wander back over the day's steady rhythm. The prayers, the bees, the orchard, the manuscripts, the spring water. Each chore, each ritual, a thread in a fabric woven across centuries. You recall a playful story shared by one of the elder monks, about a mischievous novice who once swapped the sacred incense for wild herbs, leading to a rather surprising scent during Vespers. It's a reminder that even in the most solemn places, laughter finds its way in. Historians still argue whether the precise daily routines of 12th-century Ethiopian monks were uniform across regions or adapted locally. Either way, the devotion and simplicity shine through the centuries. The fading light catches on the monastery's ancient stones, highlighting the intricate crosses carved into doorways and walls. These crosses, called Lalibela crosses, are unique to Ethiopian Christianity and often believed to carry protective powers. As dusk deepens, you join the brothers for the final prayers of the day. The soft chants echo through the cool air, a gentle wave that carries you toward rest. After prayers, you retreat to your modest cell, the flicker of candlelight casting dancing shadows on the rough walls. You lay down on your straw mat, the smell of dried herbs lingering from the day's chores. Your mind quiets, the gentle cadence of the chants still echoing softly in your ears. Outside, the night sky is a velvet expanse studded with stars, the same stars that have guided monks here for generations. You breathe deeply, the cool night air filling your lungs. The peace of the monastery seeps into your bones, wrapping you in a calm deeper than words. Tomorrow, the rhythm will begin again, steady, sacred, and full of quiet beauty. For now, you close your eyes, carried softly into sleep by the timeless song of this ancient place. Word count, 1,100. Wind down, 300 words. The night deepens, and your breathing slows as the gentle hush of the monastery embraces you. Imagine the soft rustle of leaves outside your window, the distant call of a night bird blending with the faint flicker of candlelight. All around you, centuries of quiet devotion seem to hum softly in the stillness. The steady rhythm of the day, prayers, bees, orchards, manuscripts, and spring water, fades gently like the last notes of a lullaby. Your body sinks deeper into rest, heavy yet light, held by the peacefulness that only places steeped in history can offer. You feel the softness of your simple straw mat beneath you, the cool stone walls a quiet comfort. Outside, the stars continue their silent watch, timeless witnesses to every whispered prayer and every careful chore. There's no rush here, no need to hurry. Just the slow, soothing flow of time, measured by the rising and setting sun, the blooming of fruit trees, and the chant of monks who have walked this path before you. So breathe deeply, feel the calm spread through your limbs, and know that in this ancient place, peace is not just an idea, it's a way of life. Rest well now, carried by the gentle night, wrapped in the quiet grace of a 12th-century Ethiopian monastery. Sweet dreams.